welcome everyone to episode 4 of Wiki's preseason BBL Supercoach Watch. I am at the lunch lobby of a hotel where I'm going to have a cousin's wedding in about 3 hours. So Shane, I hope you're in a less busy place.
I have, yeah. But I wish I was there. That's the happening place. That's the place to be.
I got to say, if my family sees me working instead of smashing this lunch before everyone gets here, they're going to be hugely surprised. Very much against the grain in terms of my personality. But yeah, look,
Well,
as I
let's
said
just
to Shane,
get
yeah,
into it.
well, I got 15 minutes to start lunch, so we've got to do a bit of a mini pod this time. But no, we'll get straight into it. As always, guys, you can Google Wiki Linktree. BBL season is just over a week away. We've got this podcast, we've got data tools, we've got our Discord, got our sort of open league as well with what is it now 75 people that have signed up. I think it's a shame.
75, yeah.
We're ticking over. I
So
think
far,
if we get to
75.
we've said if we get to 100 people, we're going to add $50 onto our prize pool. What was our prize pool again? Was it 500?
100?
500, yep. Every
Hold
100
on.
people, well, when we get to 100 people, we're going to add $50. Every 50 people after that, we're going to keep adding $50. You can read all about it. Just Google Wiki Linktree. You can check it all out. But for now, let's get straight into it. We're talking about player roles today. So Shane, you wanna kick us off?
Yes, I do. So, well, I'm the one who suggested it. I better be the one who kicks it off. So I thought that it's a good idea to chat a little bit about player roles in two senses of the word. One is the sort of in-game positions, the sort of bat slash bowl, uh, which you see like the player classifications as well as the players' real life roles. So in my notes, I said, e.g., Will Fraser McGurk bat top three. That's the kind of role we're talking about, and bat, and whether somebody's like a dual position, like a Maxwell, like a bat or bowl. So in both senses of that term. Yeah, so I thought it'd be like a really good idea to sort of go into the game, look at the players, and see if there are any interesting in-game roles to talk about. We're just like 10 days, as you said, 10 days away from the start of the BBL. The Heat have a round one triple. Michael Neser is obviously sort of he's somebody who struck me as like an example of one of those guys, a bat slash bowl. Maybe he's not super relevant with other commitments for the first round, but I'm sure he'll sort of feature in a lot of teams going forward. But I actually kind of wanted to start by asking you, as someone who's played Supercoach a lot more than I have, but would you ever, I don't know, like obviously the dual positions allows you to pick um, bowlers, dual position players, bowlers among the 5 slots for batters and vice versa as well. But my question is, would you ever sort of use those dual positions to their full extent? Like what I'm asking is, would you ever pick Michael Neser as one of your 5 batters?
That's a really tricky question. Honestly, I've never planned a BBL Supercoach season in advance as we are doing this year. But I think generally my way to go has been kind of like pick your guns, like pick your couple of gun bowlers, couple of gun batsmen. And I think with the all-rounder spots, like it's weird discussing it, but when you put your team together, it actually becomes quite obvious because I think if you've got one person out of place, whether when you're making your team or when you're doing trades, you just need to make sure that you actually revisit it. Because at the time, it's like, I really want this. Like, I've only got this much money in my cap, but then I don't want anyone in this cap. Well, no shit. Like, you can just obviously sub down a batsman to the bowling spot and see if you can find a batsman in that spot. So I think like I haven't really thought about it exactly to answer your question, but I think I generally say like you want to sort of commit to your batsman only, bowler only, keeper only guys first because you know that the all-rounders can obviously like be swapped around. And I think Michael Neser is an example of one where traditionally, like you wouldn't like obviously, yeah, great bowler. I think he could be kind of like a bit of an optical illusion in a way, in that everyone's heard about the centuries that he scored, but when you say player roles, I think that in real life role is very important. Like, is he actually going to get a crack at the top, say even like position number 6 or even 7? Because if he's just batting 8, it doesn't matter how many county or like shield centuries he's got. If he just doesn't have the role, he doesn't have the role. So yeah, I didn't answer your question exactly, but I think it's just like important to get the in like real life role like set, and then think about like how everyone fits into your team.
Interesting. Yeah. And one of the reasons I asked that is because at the moment I've Marcus Stone's into my team as one of my 5 bowlers. So I'm starting with Stone's and Maxwell, and as I'm sure a lot of people are, Maxwell's at crazy high ownership right now. Stone's has actually got a good chunk of ownership as well. So I assume that um, people are sort of using those roles to fit both of those guys in, considering that there's a heat triple
Yeah,
around.
I think I would
Um,
just say this has been discussed on a couple of the different Supercoach sort of group chats and stuff that I'm on. I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to ownership right now, only because a lot of the casual players that are probably signed up just, like auto select or select the guys that they know and stuff like that. It is a good indicator though, and I think it's something that I try to kind of like if you are someone who watches a lot of cricket, a lot of BBL, and you're into your Supercoach quite a bit, whether it's to beat your mates or to you just love Supercoach. I think an important thing to look at is also like if you do know that well-known players don't have the role that everyone thinks they have, it could be a pretty interesting decision to just like not pick them and sort of go against the grain a little bit. Like for example, a perfect example is Stoinis. Like I don't know the price that he's at this year, but just generally speaking, we're used to Marcus Stoinis's opening bat gets 2 or 3 overs, just like don't even have to like a no-brainer pick, right? But like, where is he going to bat for the Stars this year? Is he going to bowl at all after like a World Cup and depending on the Stars lineup? So I think it's just worth getting the roles right and sort of obviously Honeyball's great at breaking a lot of this news and obviously we're going to do our best as well. But I think just like actually understanding who the teams are, how many games of a double or triple round each player playing, and also are they fit enough to actually bowl? Because I think for a lot of especially for the Aussie players coming from the World Cup and a lot of the well-known BBL players are kind of getting older as well. So just like workload management and stuff is quite important. But it is. We'll get back to. Should we maybe just kind of like rattle off a couple of the players that you've got? And if you want, you can kind of bring them up, and I'll just sort of give you my 2 cents on what I think about them.
Sure. So I think the first thing actually wanted to flag is I sort of came across this while I was doing my research, and I noticed there are a few interesting in-game roles at the Hurricanes. I noticed that Corey Anderson is a bat, but he might bowl. I'm not sure whether you want to rely on his bowling, whether you're the Hurricanes or you're playing Supercoach. I noticed that Chris Jordan is a bowler. He's not an all-rounder. And I noticed that Mitch Owen is a 62K dual position player. I think he could be a really useful enabler with that role, both at that price point and with the role, maybe even for looping if you're interested in that. But I just thought I thought I'd first flag the Hurricanes' roles and then I talk a little bit about um, in real life roles of players that might be interesting to look out for. Last week with the show we mentioned Tim David as potentially, hey, if this guy has a bowling role, maybe I'd look twice at him. I think some guys like Nick Maddinson, obviously he's on his way back from an injury, from a long-term injury. He's somebody to look at. He's obviously, he's the Renegades captain, so he play all games. He can bowl a bit. He's someone to look at. Nathan McSweeney is another one. He bowled a bit for the Heat last year. I think he's not available at the start of the season. He's part of that PM's 11 game, I think. But he's somebody else to look at because some of the other guys in that top sort of 3-4 just don't bowl at all. Whether it's Josh Brown or Sam Billings, obviously who's a wicket keeper, and I don't think Colin Munro bowls anymore if he's going to be available.
Yep, I think
I also, yeah,
I was just going to say, sorry, with the Hurricanes guys. So, it's really interesting talking about this, right? Because I've got like 10 years of playing BBL Supercoach, and you're going from avid cricket fan, avid fantasy player to like getting really deep into BBL Supercoach. And not to say that like my opinions any more important. Like when the game starts, we all start from zero, right? But all I'm trying to say is like I think when I started playing Supercoach, both NRL and BBL, my attitude was always to like kind of look at all the different options, and you should do that. But I think it's like there's a really fine line between wow, this person could do it all. Like a Corey Anderson could bat in the middle, bowl a couple of overs, probably in like decent fielding positions. There's a real fine line between that and dude, this guy's batting at 6, ain't bowling, ain't getting any catches. This guy's a complete flop. So I think it's just like a really fun, and I've seen the same thing in NRL, right? Like sometimes like you're going for these like attacking upside guys in the set like the centers. That's like a really common thing in NRL fantasy and Supercoach, like being really wary of centers because like you think they'll get some tackles then they'll get some attacking stats. They'll get a bit of both. But then if they don't get, or like tackles aren't really going to get you anywhere in Supercoach, if they don't get the attacking stats, then they're just completely useless. So I think like it might be a really good thing for Sashan and I to have a crack at next week, where we kind of dig, like when we do our predicted teams and stuff, to go a little bit deeper and actually try to define roles, and then just like identify these like perfect guys that we think could at least, is it 3 overs to get the economy rate bonus?
Yeah,
Or
it's
is
a
it
minimum
2?
threshold of
I
3.
think it's 3, isn't it? Yeah. So I reckon like if we can kind of try to identify like the predicted 11s and then like who we think are some top, say, 5 batsmen that might get at least a couple of overs, and then vice versa. Who are guys that you expect to bowl for? They are bowlers, but then could bat at like that sort of crucial number 6, because there's a pretty big, there's a very big difference between number 6 and number 8. Like your Daniel Sams, you kind of know that he'll consistently get enough opportunities to get his 20, is it 20 runs the minimum for the strike rate bonus as a
Strike rate.
batsman?
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a very big difference between getting, I don't know, 10 to 12 balls and having enough chances to hit sort of that 2 to 3 boundary range to get up to 20. And then at number 8, you're likely getting that sort of, I don't know, 3 to 5 balls or whatever. We'll do some analysis on it. We'll actually break out the numbers, but I think that's really important to get right. Chris Jordan is another one. Like, I don't know too much about his form, but he's another one where like we know he can bat from his experience in other comps, but where is he going to bat this year for his BBL team? And if it is that number 8 and beyond, then it's almost like you're really only getting him for his bowling and your fielding. Like you can't be relying on a number 8 for any batting points. Anything you get is kind of a bonus. Mitch Owen, he was the guy that bowls. He bowls relatively quick, doesn't he? I remember him bowling a hard ball, like 1 foot. Like he's like a young, strapping dude, right? Am I getting that wrong?
I think so.
Is he a spin
Unless
bowler?
I'm
Because what I remember is like this like
no,
quick bowler. Yeah. And he hit a
unless I'm
few
confusing
sixes
him.
at the end of the season.
I think
Well,
you're right.
we'll have a look before next episode. But the dude I remember, and I might be wrong with this one, he has like brown, slick backed hair, like strapping, like relatively quick young bowler. And he hit a few boundaries in a couple of innings throughout the like end of the season. And if I'm remembering the right guy, it's one of those guys where like a Will Sutherland type, where it's like he's done like bits and pieces, and you're kind of just hoping you get him at the right time, and like you're the person who picks this guy up when he has his breakout season. But I guess we'll have to A, make sure that's the correct guy, and B, make sure he's got the correct role.
Yeah. Something you said about picking the guys who could have a breakout season is very, very interesting. So I just sort of was looking through the players and looking through the roles, and I noticed that, well, in terms of real life roles, Fraser McGurk's, I think, a good example of somebody who people are like watching very, very closely. I think he's like 60, 70K something. He's got like a very, very cheap 5-figure price. And if he's batting in that top 3, maybe even top 4 for the Renegades, he's worth looking at. But I realize he's not alone. Like I think there's a few guys who are like that in the game this year. Fraser McGurk, by the way, it's a bit tricky with him because that Renegades top order is very crowded. There's Quinton de Kock, there's Madison, there's Sean Marsh if he might play.
The commentator,
It's
Finchie.
yeah.
Can't forget him.
Yeah, Finch as well. But yeah, I think it sort of could be a good exercise. I think both if you're listening to the show, watching the show, and for us in between shows to sort of go back and look at this club by club again and see who might actually be that guy who's got the potential of getting like a good role, who can be like the sort of Will Sutherland for this season. I was listening to the Honeyball podcast earlier today, and Nathan Scoville was on it, part of our sort of like Twitter circle with like part of BBL Supercoach Twitter circle, also a very good Supercoach player I found out. Oh yes, so he actually flagged Henry Hunt at the strikers as somebody to look out for. So shout out to him for that. He said that, listen, if this guy is batting in a good role, just keep an eye out for him. Like he's definitely worth looking at. But I'm just thinking about players like that. Somebody at a 5-figure price who is going to have one of those, like who's going to have one of those seasons. I think Fraser McGurk and Henry Hunt, and maybe if Darcy Short gets an interesting role again, or somebody like that, they could be worth looking at. Just
talking about this is making me realize how bloody old I'm getting, because like the enthusiasm that you have for all these like potentially like differential picks, And I'm like, nah, been scarred too many times. Bring me back to who's like a stock set, like a Darcy Short. And I'm like, yes, I love guys who've like done it all and then gotten it like massively. Like, every time you bring up like analysis and form, I'm like, nah. Don't worry about form. Give me long. I'm all about caliber and like pedigree. So I'm like, if Darcy Short's been like the top run scorer in the BBL, can bowl a few overs, usually I can just imagine him like out in the deep mid wicket, like gets like quite a few catches as well. Like I'm gonna be banking on those type of guys. And I reckon in terms of the there's nothing wrong with your Fraser McGurk's and a couple of the others that you mentioned, by the way. But I reckon this year I'm just gonna go for a bit of an OG feel with my team, and like if I can find any like hidden gems, like and especially like I think what will end up happening is someone like a Fraser McGurk will be like hot on everyone's like everyone will be sort of thinking about him for the what was his innings? Was it 140 balls or what did he do? Like ridiculous innings that he had.
Something ridiculous. We've talked about that 100. Yeah, we've talked about that 100
I forgot what it
before on the
was.
show.
That crazy ass 100. Everyone's like, oh wow, Fraser McGurk. And if I can potentially go like a Darcy Short for don't know his price now, but like I don't know. I'd love to sort of like zig where others are zagging. Like nothing crazy, like nothing out of like completely out of the box. But there's just so many like value options that it's going to be really, really cool. We can start doing some polls as well on Twitter and our Discord about like who people are going at a certain options. And when we start seeing people sending teams and stuff, it'll be really nice to see the different roles that they're going for. But I think the other thing that you mentioned, in terms of scouting for a role, I think a lot of that is also going to be news based. So like in that last handful of days before the first game for every team, the coach starts coming out with comments and like there's little press conferences where we can drag sort of quotes out of. So we'll try to do as much of that as possible. We've got 3 full-time marketing people on our team as well as myself. So we'll start hunting all new Supercoach gossip before the season starts. I noticed you had a point on Jack Wood. I got to say, like I saw Luke Wood last year. He's the left arm swing bowler that can bat a bit for the Stars, right? Who is Jack Wood? I feel like I've heard the name a few times and I can't figure out or can't remember which one he is.
I don't think Luke Wood can pronounce from memory.
I think he's like a number 8 or 9 that can swing. But yeah, the left arm,
like English,
yes,
left arm,
the English seamer. Yep.
Yeah. So shout out to Honeyball, by the way, for Jack Wood. He's someone who is listed as a dual position bat bowl. He has played in the BBL before, like only a couple of games or so. Plays for the Heat. But like with the sort of the flux at the Brisbane Heat at the moment, with all these different players who like will they play, will they not play, with the injuries, with the PM's 11. Jack Wood has sort of come to the fore again. He's actually in the picture for selection, I think, at the Heat this year. Somebody who can who's actually, I think, reinvented himself as a batter. He used to be a spin bowler. When he initially
is he Aussie
played
or
in the BBL,
English?
from what I remember. No, he's an Aussie guy. And he sort of he has, I think, invented himself as sort of reinvented himself in time for the BBL season as a batter, if I remember that Honeyball podcast correctly. Sort of Ben was talking a little bit more about it in detail, and he could have a very interesting role again going into this season. If let's say he's going to bowl a couple of overs and he's going to have potentially a more attractive batting role, he could be someone to look at for that triple.
Is it sort of understood that he'll try to bat top 4, or is it like a 5 or 6?
I think with Khwaja and Manas now in the frame, I don't know if he
That's only one game
gets
though.
that big a top 4. Yeah. So like it depends on whether you think like he'll get a bigger role in the latter 2 games of the double, or do you think like they'll just make straight swaps for Manas and Khwaja and just like not bother with moving him up the order. Again, I think as with a lot of these guys, these budget guys who have potentially attractive roles, like some of it is very much like I'm going to pick and anoint this guy as the sort of the big pick who's going to have a breakout season, but you're actually sort of waiting in many cases to see if the role is going to be more attractive.
Yep. I think with a lot of this, like if you're thinking that, oh man, these guys aren't committing to anything, they're bringing up all these topics, I want answers. In all honesty, the season's 10 days ago, and I think even the BBL teams are being shocked by, Rashid Khan injury type of stuff, like the PM's 11 game. There's just chaos with the BBL this year. So it's not that we're trying not to commit. It's just that if the teams don't know, we don't know. So we're planning to do potential bonus pod at the end of this week, exactly a week out from the BBL. We're going to do a massive deep dive. So Shane and I are going to catch up in person next Monday. So we'll do like a longer pod, go into much more detail, and we'll probably do like another bonus pod like the day before the comp or something like that. So I think it's like, instead of us talking crap when we don't actually know and speculating, which is great. So I say talking crap, that's like the most fun part of Discord groups and group chats, right? You want to sort of discuss all the hypothetical stuff. But on this pod, we're trying to get to the point. Once we get the news, obviously we'll go much more into detail. I can start smelling the food, and people are starting to line up for the food. I don't want to miss out. So last couple of things before we head off. I wanted to say, so your last point around, I love this because so much of this is going to come around to like personal preference. So Shane brought up in his notes that would you have players that are pretty much only bowlers in real life in batting slots in Supercoach? I'm the opposite. I want batsmen in my bowler slots, and it's not like the way to go, but I would never put a bowler in the batsman slot just because I like the upside of batsman. We had this whole conversation last week, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But my personal way to go about it is I like people who have key roles. I don't like uncertainty because I've bloody played NRL cricket BBL Supercoach for a decade, and I've just done it so many times, and then you get burnt by like if the player has upside, which is say theoretically someone is batting top 3 or 4, and that team only has 5 bowlers, and this person is the 6th bowler, and you reckon they could get 2 to 3 overs, like that's potential upside, right? So I'd go for someone like that. But if it's like, oh, dude bats at 6 and might get a couple of overs, then this year I'm just going to really stay away from that. And I'll go much harder at the guys with like locked in roles, like a top 3 or 4 bat, or like a death bowler, even a spin bowler with no chance of death overs and no chance of really batting. I'm going to stay away from those guys as well. But we'll get your answer for this, Shane, and we'll head off as I see the line growing.
Sure. So yeah, just to sort of wrap up everything, I think it's so with the whole like the main thing I guess I'd sort of add to this is sometimes the price point will just do the sorting of the role for you. I think it's just sort of like a natural function of just how the game is, right? That the guys on 5-figure prices will naturally have slightly more insecure roles, and they're more prone to being shunted up and down the order, or getting like 1 or 2 overs and just never getting any more. I think of somebody like maybe like a Campbell Callaway, for example, somebody who batted 3 in a couple of innings for the Stars last season. Would be amazing if he could do that again this season, but like at 62K, it's tough, right? You're sort of like the lower down you go, like the cheaper you pick, often the more insecure their role. Like for example, that a Matt Short will have like a nailed on role, batting at the top, and bowling like several overs a game, and that's why he's 244K. That's part of the reason why he's got that kind of price point. And I think versus a Campbell Callaway or a Fraser McGurk or somebody like that, I think that sort of insecurity of that role naturally comes with that price point. One last really quick thing is maybe you could do a bit more of a deep dive into this when we record another pod about it. But I think it's worth looking at some of the guys who might potentially be underpriced for the roles that they have, and those roles might sort of come about as a function of like moving clubs and playing a different role. I made a note about Adam Zampa in my show notes. So essentially, long story short, I put out put out a post about this around the time of the BBL draft. But Adam Zappa's kind of like this BBL unicorn because he's a spinner who bowls at the death. Like he's bowled like a decent chunk of his overs in the final 4 overs of the innings, and very very few, actually no spinners are kind of like at his level in that how much he bowls at the death and how well. And I think he's gone to the Renegades now, right? And I think, man, I look at that death bowling and I think of Tom Rogers and Kane Richardson and guys like that, and I think he's going to be there to like take a big chunk out of their overs. And I'm sure that the Renegades would also appreciate the variety of having like an elite spin bowler bowling at the end. And you start looking at Adam Zampa as like a 131K death bowler, and not so much as like a spinner who bowls through the middle overs. And suddenly, I think he looks really attractive. We can sort of obviously do more of this going forward.
I think that's going to be cool. And as you're saying, like speaking of that, I thought of like we'll have to figure out how to structure this, but I'm thinking like we do a potential like an article for each team where we go through predicted 11. We could also just do like short notes on different players, because I think one way that a lot of casual players are going to get caught out, and obviously our job is to help you, but also personally, I want my own team to do well. And no, like I think like one thing with roles with a lot of the test players like Marnus, Kawaja, Steve Smith has now also confirmed. A lot of these guys are going to be forced to play that first game of the BBL just because there's been a few late outs. So I think it's actually going to cause chaos for people like not understanding that. Well, definitely don't be bloody picking these guys, especially if it's like a heat triple and you picked one of these. Or actually, Sashane might have something different to say next week. But all I was going to say is like just be wary of guys that are only playing one game. Be wary of guys that have. You also don't want to be picking guys hoping they get the role that you think they will after these guys leave. So I think that might be like a case for having like a relatively safe team in terms of roles, seeing how round one goes, and then attacking round two onwards with more certainty around roles. But anyways, guys, like you can obviously listen to this pod. Just Google Wiki Linktree, you'll find the links to it. Our Discord, our social media is starting to tick along with only a week and a half left to BBL season. But otherwise, we'll catch you either later this week or definitely next time Monday. Sorry, this time next week on Monday. And yeah, we'll catch you soon.